Welcome to The Verdict. Tom Fair is an award-winning trial lawyer who knows there is more to our stories than what you see on the surface. He has built his law firm, Fair Law, into one of the top injury and employment trial firms representing people in California. Join us each week as Tom explores the successes, challenges, and lessons learned from some incredible people. Hit subscribe, follow Fair Law on Facebook and Instagram, and let's get to the verdict. And now, here is your host, Tom Fair.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Verdict. Today, we have Adriana Cowdin, the CEO and Managing Director of Dekaf Digital. She is a four-time entrepreneur and retired corporate America C-level marketing executive who led social media marketing for a $40 billion retailer overseeing 150 brands and was the CDMO for a $1 billion home security company. In 2016, founded Dekaf Digital, a digital marketing agency that believes in data and the difference it makes for their clients. What's unique about her is her passion in giving back and finding balance in life. She served on several boards of directors for nonprofit organizations and is a regular volunteer in her community. She has been featured on ABC News, Fox Business, CNN Money, the Huffington Post, the New York Times, as well as several other publications. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on. You know, I'd like to just get an idea, just if you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. So my career started in the telecom industry. So back in the Ma Bell days, US West, which is, I think, been bought 3 times over, and now, like everything else, is part of CenturyLink. But I started at US West, and then I went to AT&T, and then Level 3. So I did kind of the telecom round, and I was originally in human resources, recruiting, hiring trade shows and events and training. And at Level 3, one of the senior vice presidents of marketing came to my vice president and was like, we need an A player, doesn't have to have marketing experience. And so he was like, oh, take Adriana. And I was like, I'm not a marketeer. Like, this is not what I do. And she came, and it took her about 3 months to convince me to finally go over. And thankfully I did, because I love it. I've been in it ever since. It's been over 25 years now, I think. So I'm just really blessed that she was as persistent as she was.
When you said Ma Bell, I just think of, I don't know if you know the Beastie Boys song, it's like Ma Bell, ill communication, but that's just me. I grew up listening to a lot of different music as a kid. With human resources, with that type of background, were you able to use any of the lessons that you learned in human resources and apply them in the marketing side of things?
Yeah, I think all the way up through today, I'm a very different person when you're interviewing with me than typical people. It takes me maybe 5 minutes to figure out if someone is going to be a fit with a company, because I was in recruiting for so long that I had at one point 1,000 jobs open that I was managing. So you didn't have the luxury of like, let's spend an hour getting to know each other. So that's definitely carried through. And then just the ability to communicate clearly. So particularly when you're in HR, people want to know about their benefits or their training or their hiring process. So you have to be really well organized and easy to communicate with. And so those two have absolutely carried me through my whole career.
Yeah. What would you say, just from a human resource perspective? I know that's not your focus these days, but for people that are hiring, what would be something that a company should look for when they're vetting candidates?
So I always ask a couple of consistent questions. What motivates you is one of them. And this happened just the other day. We're hiring a new director of business development. And anytime I'm hiring someone in biz dev or sales, I really want that answer to be money. I want to know that you are in it to make money. And that was exactly what he said. He said, I'd be remiss if I didn't say money motivates me. And I was like, yes. So certainly, what motivates you? I always like to ask 3 adjectives that people use to describe themselves and why they selected those 3. Ironically, what you find out the most is people don't know what an adjective is. Scary, but true.
That's going to be a crossed off my list.
And then I would say really leaning into your network. So Decaf is a team of just under 15 people now. We've only actively recruited for 2 of those roles. Everyone else was referred by someone who already works for the business. And those are going to be your best candidates. So definitely lean into those employee referrals.
Yeah, that makes sense. What made you decide to start your own business?
So I had a couple of my own businesses in the way back. Actually, one was an HR business. It was called HR in a Box. So I use it every day. It was back when everything was like on CD-ROM and everything was developed in Word and PDF. So ironically, we still use a lot of that HR in a Box software for Dekaf Digital. So that's really nice. But this one, to go into Dekaf Digital, I had some significant health challenges arise in 2015. I was diagnosed with pancreatic disease. And anyone who knows that the pancreas is nothing to mess with. It's an angry little organ. And so I was in the hospital on and off for probably 6 months, more so
Wow.
in than out. The company I was working for then, I was the chief digital marketing officer of a home security company. And unfortunately, they took it more as, like I had a brain disease. As I would always say, my
Mm.
pancreas is broken, not my brain. And so unfortunately, they really looked at it as a way to separate me from the company after quite a tenure there. And having that happen was a blessing in disguise. I didn't quite realize how hard I had been pushing to keep working through everything until I had like the first week where I wasn't doing that. It was definitely a blessing. And then also I got to the point of like, if I'm going to have to work with this new kind of health issue, I now have 10 chronic diseases. So it's just catapulted. But I
Wow.
thought if I'm going to have to work with these chronic health issues and kind of my unique broken body, maybe it would be better if I just did my own thing again. And so when I separated from them, I immediately launched Dekaf Digital, and we quickly, I think in the first 45 days, landed our first customer. So I felt like, okay, that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's usually the scariest thing, right? Starting a business is whether you have a product or a service and getting your first customer, or whether you're going to get one and whether it's going to actually take off. So it must have been pretty scary at first.
It was. And, people that come to me and ask me my advice for like starting their own company, I always say have 12 months of money in the bank, because you may make no money for the first 12 months, but you will be spending money. And if you don't have that cushion, it puts a lot of undue stress and pressure on the business to succeed. And a lot of times that will actually crush the business. Now, I would love to have taken my own advice, but most of my money was going to medical expenses. So I did not have 12 months in the bank. So literally, I was just blessed that I got a client as quick as I did.
Yeah. You mentioned something about, having these chronic ailments and that some people thought this was in your head or a brain disease, as you phrase it. Can you say more about that?
So when you have a disease like pancreatitis, it affects most of your GI condition or organs. In my case, I was on literally fentanyl. There's a patch, prescription fentanyl,
Wow.
and Dilaudid at the same time, which is just a copious amount of narcotics. And I've also had 7 feeding tubes. So when I
Oh,
went
wow.
back to my office in December of 2015, I had a feeding tube coming out of my abdomen and tied to a backpack where all the feed hung. And I was on a lot of narcotics. So that can impact your brain. But as what I tried to convey to them, and I always say to people now, is I'm just as smart. I'm just as, dedicated to everything as I always was. Sometimes now I trip up on my words because I have been so sick for so long that like my brain is a little bit slower on certain occasions, particularly when I'm tired.
Yeah.
And so I'll trip up on a word or not be able to get a name out of my mouth. It's almost like a stutter. But you really figure out who your support system is and lean into that, because they're the ones saying you're great. You can totally do this. Go after this, as opposed to saying, well, now that you're sick, you should really just retire. And as my not so great saying, I always say they just want to put you out to pasture. You had a
Right.
great run. Now you're sick. You can do nothing the rest of your life.
Yeah, we're not old Yeller just because, something like that has happened.
Right.
Did you get a sense from people that knew you before you got sick and after? Some people had looked at you differently or treated you differently because of your ailments and what you were going through?
Absolutely. I will tell you, people that go through chronic illness, be it, or even just cancer, chemotherapy and radiation treatments, um, a lot of people don't know how to respond to when someone is sick for a chronic period, not the flu or even COVID, but chronically sick. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. And so they literally just stop calling. They stop coming over. They stop emailing or writing. And that's what I mean when you really find out who your support system is. You find those people that jump up and say, hey, I may be out of town, but I know you have to eat really restricted, so I bought you a gift card to Whole Foods. Or, can we do a meal train for you when you get home from the hospital? And ironically, a lot of the times I couldn't eat, but I would say yes because my husband needed to eat and he was busy taking care of me. And some people stepped up and were like, hey, if you need someone to come stay with you, let me know. And we took them up on that. And other people surprisingly just literally stopped communicating.
Wow.
I don't know if it's like they think they're going to catch it or if it's just they don't know what to do around us. I was like, I'm the same person. Just my organs aren't all there anymore.
And it's interesting though, here we are, we're having a conversation, and as professionally as I could say it, I mean, you look great, you look healthy, normal. And so somebody seeing you for the first time or meeting you may not know or understand that you are dealing with 10 chronic ailments at this point.
Yeah, they would have no idea. And on really bad days, I have a handicap sticker. I've had it for years. On really bad days, I always say the choice is I can walk from the back of the parking lot to the store, but I can't get in the store and do everything I need. Or I can park in handicap and I can use my energy to walk through the grocery store, whatever store, get what I need and go back.
Yeah.
And on bad days when I have to use the parking sticker, boy, do I get the looks. And I get comments too.
Oh yeah, there's the healthy person using the disabled parking spot, or the
Yes.
handicap
Yeah.
parking spot.
Yeah.
And it's judgy. I mean, there's you feel the judgment from other people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
With having to manage this body and deal with this adversity, have you been able to find strength in that process?
For sure. So my husband is a huge source of strength for me. So is my little baby. He's going to be 14. He's a Shih Tzu, but he's an empath. He knows on that which days are worse than others, and he'll just come lay by me and let me pet him, which calms some of my anxiety or upset or even nausea. And so I have found ways to persevere through it. I think I've always been naturally just a strong person. I kind of came out that way. But I saw this as an opportunity to educate the world on what you can do in the face of adversity. And so my thought is like, I can either laugh about it and live with it, or I can let it totally ruin my life. And what good is that? That doesn't do any good for anybody.
Yeah, no, it's true. And having that perspective and, choosing what narrative you want to subscribe to can change your energy, your mood, your motivation, all of those things. With Dekaf Digital, can you just tell us a little bit more about Dekaf Digital and what kind of services it provides to your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you leaned in on it when you were introducing me, but we believe in data. And so we use competitive and audience intelligence reporting for all of our clients. And we take those insights and develop marketing strategies. So sometimes we function as a fractional CMO and help them onboard their own marketing team. Sometimes we're just an agency to the existing CMO and VP of marketing. But we do everything from organic social media to paid social media ads, paid Google ads. We do a lot of campaign ideation. We have a very good creative team that does fantastic design and campaign ideation and activation. And then we do a lot of omni-channel strategy planning. And so many companies will have several agencies working with them. And if they're not all talking to each other, and more particularly to the client, it just becomes very convoluted, more so for the consumer or the user journey than anyone. And so we come in and kind of do a quarterly planning session that says, okay, here's what we're going to do for the theme for this month or this quarter. And here's how we're going to activate it in social and email and paid and mobile and all of that.
Is
So we
there
do all of that.
is there a particular client base that you focus on, or is it anybody that needs your services?
We like to say it's high growth companies. So that could be a company that's recently got VC funding, right? It could be a mid-sized company that's trying to double in growth from 150 million to 300 million. We do have a whale of a client that's a $2 trillion client. That is not our prospecting area. That is not our ideal client, but we love them. So it's really that high growth company that's looking to change things in the industry, and primarily in food and beverage, retail and e-commerce, including pet products and technology. Those are really the three sectors we focus in on. For the most part, we're in the United States and Canada. We do have an office in Tokyo that we work with some of the major Japanese brands out of.
So are you working, I'm always into what's happening in the future or going to happen in the future. And I see things like with the electric flying car movement, or even with the future of our agriculture and meat being made out of petri dishes to help save the planet. So we're not just slaughtering cows or keeping them on antibiotics, or, you know, all of the deforestation that's happening. Are you looking to work with, I mean, I know there are several companies out there that are trying to get a foothold and trying to ultimately become sustainable in their production. Are you looking at companies like that as well to work with, or are you potentially working with companies like that right now?
Yeah, we work with some of them right now. We have a facial skincare company that is primarily e-commerce. Their products are all natural, all organic. Even their shipping is recyclable, natural. It's like a natural color brown. So we certainly work with some of those clients right now. We also work with an automotive client, and they've kind of positioned, I don't know if they're fintech or automotive, they're kind of both, but they've certainly started positioning more electric vehicles. And then from the perspective of Dekaf Digital, following COVID, everyone went remote. Now I say they've all scattered to the winds, because they're as far away as California and Seattle to like Philadelphia, and Florida. So they're all over in Michigan and Wisconsin, and so they're everywhere. So we have a very low footprint in terms of carbon, and I think that's a good thing. In addition, every quarter we give a percentage of our profits back to the communities in which we live and work. And so when the company was really small, I selected those nonprofits, and now I ask the team to select that. So for example, for Q3, they'll send in all their suggestions by the end of this month. And then I will kind of divvy up our profits once we reconcile the end of the month and that percentage, and donate it to the organizations they've asked for.
That's incredible. Not a lot of companies will focus their efforts back into the communities that they serve. Can you tell us just a little bit about some of the work that you do in the community, and what nonprofits you've worked for?
Yeah, absolutely. So right before, I lived in Chicago for 10 years directly before this, and I served on Special Olympics Illinois, which is just such a joy. If anyone's had the opportunity to work with their athletes or people with those particular challenges, they are the most loving, wonderful people. I definitely got more from them than I ever gave them. And we still do the Duck Derby, which is an annual fundraising for them, and their gala every year. We still sponsor that and go up there in Chicago. I also work for the National Pancreas Foundation. I'm on their board and on their executive committee. My key areas there are really advancing the knowledge of type 3C diabetes, which is something I have. It's very unknown, even in the medical community. And so I sit on that committee. And then also, I work a lot with the FDA and Congress to lobby them to really get them to put forward drugs and new medications and treatments for pancreatic disease. Because it is so, this is the worst thing to say, but because it is so deadly, it's like just overlooked. Like no matter what we figure out, people are going to die. And so it is not well funded. And so I do a lot of work in the pancreas community to get that to be much more top of mind for our congressional districts.
Yeah. And I kind of, I mean, I could see almost, I mean, the irony in that we're in the medical community. This is so bad. Forget it. There's other things that we think we can actually save people from. This isn't something that we're necessarily going to focus on. You know, with the pancreas, it's pancreatitis is ultimately what you had. And is that where a lot of the other ailments developed as well, the chronic ailments from that?
So before I got pancreatitis, I've been diagnosed with gastroparesis, which basically means paralyzed stomach. I also had hypopituitary. So my pituitary, which is a little gland in your brain the size of a pea, functions as though it has a tumor. And so that presents as hypothyroid and really hormonal imbalances. I have Addison's disease, which is a disease of your adrenal glands. So for example, when a normal individual gets stressed, their cortisol kicks on. I don't have cortisol kick on, so stress and I do not work well together. But after getting pancreatic disease, I have become a type 3C diabetic, and that's because my pancreas was removed. So some people will listen to this and be like, you can't live without a pancreas. You absolutely can.
Newsflash, you can.
Yeah, hello. And so I have type 3C diabetes. I ended up with liver disease. I have a platelet disease called ITP. Because of the Addison's disease, what you do is you take steroids every day. So I take prednisone every day, and it doesn't give me all the kind of crazy zoomies and weight gain it gives other people because it's just creating homeostasis in my body. But a function of being on steroids for 20 some years means that you end up with osteoporosis. So I also have osteoporosis as a result of being on the steroids.
You know, if you can, with all of that, if you can do all of what you're doing, I imagine that, you know, during your coaching or working with clients, you can really give them and speak from experience that they can do whatever it is that they want to do in life. That really, if you think something's holding you back, or you've got some mental block or some restriction, you can overcome it.
Yes.
Can you tell us just some of the challenges that you face sort of currently in your industry and working with clients, or just generally in doing what you're doing?
Yeah. So I like to say we do business with people we like. There are a plenitude of companies that need our services, and there are plenty of competitors to us as well. So given how much time you work and the energy and effort we put into our clients and that they put into our partnership with them, I like to work with people we like. So we have been known to cancel a contract if we're in it for 5-6 months and things just aren't working out in an interpersonal manner, or there isn't enough understanding, things like that. I would say the biggest challenges and both opportunities are hiring and expanding. So as I mentioned, I think referral is the best way. The way I found the gentleman we have that leads our Tokyo office is a little unique. My husband is a chief race engineer for an IndyCar team.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he engineered an IndyCar champion named Alex Palou in Alex's rookie year. And Alex's manager was from Japan. So I reached out to him and I was like, hey, do you know anyone in Japan that does this? And it was kind of like this, absolutely the 6 degrees of connection that turned out to be how we found Charlie. And so I think leaning into what you're good at, I'm naturally good at talking to people. That's a strength. And then also building up the areas you're not great at. Sales is not my expertise. Accounting is not my expertise. So you have to really identify what works well and lean into those, as opposed to trying to just build on your weaknesses and faltering.
Yeah, that's really good advice, though. Just this idea of strengthening the things that you are weaker at, but then at the same time, you know, really owning the strengths that you have and making that, you know, where you focus your efforts as well. Your Tokyo office, how long is that already open?
Yeah, open in February.
And what's it like having an office all the way out in Tokyo while you're here in the States?
Yeah, for the first few months, the only thing I can think is exhausted. I mean, I was getting calls at 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. and we had meetings that went until 9 or 10 p.m. my time, and then I'm up early the next morning for all my other clients, right? All my team. And so for the first few months, it was just painfully exhausting. But just like anything, you get through that and there's glory on the other side. And so now we have a very confident team that is well positioned to grow the marketplace. And I haven't even traveled to Tokyo. One of the challenges I have with all of my diseases is traveling, particularly because I'm allergic to like 7 different food groups. So even eating is hard. And so, I've identified someone on my team that really runs that area now, and they do really well together. So it's worked out great. But again, that goes back to knowing what your limits are also. I have X amount of limits, hours per day that my body will function until it just shuts down.
Yeah.
And so I have to really balance that particularly when you're working internationally.
How have you developed the trust in your team to allow you to say, okay, well, someone else is going to be running the Tokyo office, and I really don't have the ability to travel out there anytime soon?
I was just talking to my team. I brought the whole team into Indianapolis this past week for a retreat. And I was just talking to them about that and said, one of the things that's unique about me is I give trust. Like, you get trust from me as soon as we start working together, as soon as we build a friendship, it's basically yours to lose. Once you lose it, very hard, next to impossible to get it back. And so I naturally trust people because I'm of the mindset that if you trust them to do good work and have solid ethics and all of that, if you've done your due diligence in hiring them, you should be in a good place. If after that they do something to break trust or lose trust, it's worth having a conversation. And if it cannot be resolved, then I coach them out.
Yeah. And can you say more about the coaching out? That's an interesting, I mean, I don't do HR, and my wife does the HR at our firm.
Yeah.
When you say coaching out, what is that, or that process?
So I always say you can either coach them up or coach them out. And my preference is to coach people up always, but sometimes that doesn't work. And so coaching them out is really developing an exit plan that works for both parties, where I think for the most part, I even remain a reference to specific functions they may have served, but not overall as an employer. And so it's more about having those difficult conversations that say it's not working out with us anymore, this project is not working, et cetera. And I think we need to find a different solution. But I think it's important to lean in first to coaching someone up and giving them that 30-day, 60-day, 90-day period to really cure any issues that are going on, with the exception of fraud or criminal activity, of course.
Sure.
That being the exception.
Yeah, there's no coaching for that.
Yeah, you steal a laptop, you're not coming back.
Are there any KPIs that you use in order to just sort of track the progress of your team, or whether they're getting, their tasks done?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 5 KPIs we focus on as a whole company, and there's sales, team engagement, client profitability, client management, and social media engagement. So there are specific KPIs within those. For the team, though, we use Asana, which is a project management tool. We use Slack for instant messaging, and then we use Harvest, which is a time tracking tool. And so a couple of things. So at the end of every month, I pull a report out of Harvest that I go in every week, but at the end of every month, I pull a report that shows me how much activity they spent, how many hours by client, by project type. So if they were doing inbox management, or if they were doing meetings or setting up paid ads, I know what it is by project type. And that does a couple of things. One, it allows me to see where they're spending most of their time. And 2, it allows me to ensure we have that bottom line profitability by client. Because, for example, if we have a client where we're spending 10 hours in one activity, but we've only budgeted for 5, then we need to balance that out. In terms of KPIs for the team, we track everything in Asana. Everything has a task in Asana. We have a coordinator that is like an Asana ninja. She is amazing. And she pulls reports that show how many tasks have been completed, how many are open, and how many were totally are active by quarter. And so we review that by quarter. And then every Friday, she goes into all of the tasks that are open and retags whoever the accountable party is in that. So Fridays can be a little overwhelming because your emails are blowing up with Asana task reminders, but it's a way that we stay on top of everything.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's critical just for any business. I mean, there's a lot of businesses out there that aren't running like a business. And so having KPIs or keeping track of what's going on is absolutely critical to their success. In terms of your business, there's so much data out there, and this has become, it's almost like the age of data that we're in. Where do you see the future of your industry going?
So I think a lot of things in the paid ads realm will be automated. Right now, it's still people plugging and pressing. I mean, there are lots of dashboards like Sky and all of Mirren, and but I think it's going to get more automated, primarily because the big players, Google and Meta, continually change their algorithms. And it is very hard for the human mind to keep up with all of those changes at the same time. So I think there's automation coming, 1. 2, I think that the days of just having creative ideas that have no basis in, to be honest, reality or data or consumer research are coming to an end. I think companies have figured out that if they're going to spend $50,000 on something, they want to see a return of at least 75,000. And kind of how does that look? And then I think video is here to stay. These little I call it snackable content, that little quick hit snackable content, I think is key. And whether it's a video about cats or International Dog Days this summer, or we created a campaign called Spin the Bottle, literally based on the game for one of our clients. So whether it's small videos like that, or if it's a video explaining your service, they're definitely here to stay.
Yeah, so video is still and will be king for a while.
Yeah.
And those sort of snackables, when you're talking about that, are we talking about the reels that we're seeing like TikTok and Instagram? So
yes.
that's here to stay.
Absolutely. I mean, we're essentially in the world of ADHD mentality, right? Like we have instant gratification on everything. I have a 19-year-old stepdaughter who never learned how to drive and has no interest because I call her the Uber generation. Like they are just used to like picking up an app on their phone, ordering a car and being done. Why would they want to drive?
It's interesting you say that, because that's, a lot of the people that are pioneering the future of transportation. That is the idea, is you're going to have, technology talk to each other, and they know that you've got a meeting at 8 o'clock across town. And so your car will just be ready for you at 7:30, and you sit in it and it drives you there. And there's, it chauffeurs you and you get to work in the car as you go there. And that's the end of it. It'll pick you up when you set your little timer to get you.
It's a little scary, but it is where we're going.
It's scary because of a lot of the unknowns. And I mean, I'm sure back in the horse and buggy days, when people were introduced to cars, they were terrified of those things too. What do you see as being some of the biggest mistakes that businesses are doing in terms of their marketing?
So it's a pet peeve because it's such a big mistake, but leaving your social media to an intern is one of the biggest ones. I can't tell you how many times a year, maybe a month, I hear like, oh, we just hired this intern that's a junior in college, and so they're going to do our social media. Just because someone plays on TikTok does not mean they know how to actually create campaigns that get results. And so that's kind of a big challenge that we see a lot. The other thing is, just like anything, you don't know what you don't know. And we're finding out there's a lot more education that needs to be done with our clients, particularly in that mid-market sector. So for example, we have a luxury home goods client, and we do a lot for them, but one of them is paid ads. And their display ads through Google were not performing as well as their search ads. And they were like, why would we turn that off? It's driving all kinds of traffic to the site. And I was like, it's all unqualified junk traffic. Like your bounce rate is 80%. That's why you would turn it off. But it's this mindset of like, well, if we're getting the traffic, that's all we need. As opposed to saying, actually, what you need is qualified, good quality traffic. And so there's a lot more education, which I think has continued to happen since the pandemic, because companies that used to be in traditional marketing had to lean out of it and into digital. And so there's still that education about how do we measure ROI and what do we exactly do?
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of companies are, I mean, you want to know how do you know you're getting an ROI on your marketing, right? Because sometimes it just feels like it can for us too, but we're just throwing money at a campaign, and how do we know we actually are getting results from that? And I'm sure that's a question you get from your clients, and how do you articulate that for them?
So we do a couple of things. One, we have some really good case studies. We are constantly building new case studies on what we've done and how we've done it. Two, particularly in our role, our job is to drive traffic to your store or your site or your experience or your app, wherever you want it. It's the company's job to convert that traffic. And there's that mindset of like, well, don't you just get everything? Why aren't our sales increasing? And I'm like, well, your site is terrible. And so we could consult on your site and provide a couple of experiences to A/B test. And so that's how we try and lean in, because companies don't necessarily know that their experience is problematic until we come along and deliver 3,000 site visits and 0 convert or 2 convert. There's also that misconception that if I'm on social, I'm marketing. If I'm on email, I'm marketing. And really, marketing is about the content you put out there. If your content isn't resonating with your audience, there's no reason to do it. And social anymore is a pay-to-play game. We just talked to a recent prospect out in California, a vineyard company, and they were like, well, how can you prove ROI on social? Because we've tried it. And I'm like, the only way to prove it is paid ads. Like if you are just doing organic social, it's a hope and a prayer. Think about how big Meta is, and you're hoping that your one post gets seen. It's just unrealistic anymore. It used to be that way, but it no longer is.
So in the name of the game right now is you're going to have to pay for social. There's just no way. Like you said, hope and pray is not a good strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
What in your mind, or I guess what have you seen? What is it that makes a successful campaign, or something that is going to, attract people's attention when they're looking at that 15-second or 30 seconds even seems too long right now. That video or that piece of content. What does a successful one look like versus one that you're like, that's just going to fall flat? There's no way that's going to work.
Well, a couple of things. One, you never know when something's going to go viral. So like I did Ship My Pants for Kmart. It went hugely viral. 20 million hits. Yeah. And so
well, and that's going to attract someone right there. Shit my pants. What?
Right. And so it went hugely viral. But who knew like Little Miss was going to go as crazy as it went recently? And so part of it is jumping on trends. Like when Little Miss happened, we immediately created versions of that for all of our clients. So as part of our trend spotter. The other thing is trying to start trends or pivoting off them. So our automotive client around the Halloween season, we did Spook My Ride. So really changing up and getting creative that's going to work with your audience and content that's going to work. That made sense because a lot of their audience is families and they're dressing up for Halloween, right? So that made total sense. On the flip side, we had a client that came out with a product called whitening cream for your skin. which first of all is a terrible name for a product when you're targeting to women. Like I'm melanin, I have dark skin, like olive skin, and they wanted to launch it during Black History Month. Like, you know,
best time.
not only is that going to go flat, that's going to cause some negative backlash, right? We have another client that talks all about their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, their DEIs, and they just put out a post without us knowing of 4 white men, like as their executive team, which the reality is that is who it is. But if you're going to boast about the fact that you are inclusive and diverse and you offer equitable opportunities, maybe not do that post.
Yeah, some of these companies are saying something that they want to do, but internally and maybe from the top down, they're just not that.
No, they're giving it lip service.
Yeah,
And that's just not enough.
And that's sometimes, I mean, I imagine sometimes that's just a challenge in working with certain clients is, look, if you want to put something out there, it has to be authentic as well. It has to be who you are, and people are going to catch on if you're just paying lip service or if it's just inauthentic.
Absolutely.
Same thing. I mean, we face all the time as injury lawyers, as trial lawyers. Juries are very, very smart. I mean, sometimes people don't give credit to just regular folks, but the one thing they're good at is having a good BS meter. What do you love most about what you're doing? Because obviously you're passionate about this and marketing. What really drives you in this industry?
So 2 things that are probably equal. I love delivering results for clients. Like I love nothing more than a client contacting us and going, you just drove $400,000 in attributable revenue in 60 days. Like, I love that. It makes me feel like our team is on top of it. The client is happy and we're activating the right way. That leads into the second one, which is I am a huge proponent of my team. Like, I have their backs. If you're going to come at me and be like, this account manager did this or this doesn't, you better have a good story, because I have a great team. They're all crazy talented in their own areas. And I definitely support them and appreciate them.
Yeah. And you talked about this idea of coaching up, and I imagine that's played a large role in developing the success of your team.
Yeah, absolutely. We have someone who's going to be up for a promotion in about 6 months. I have someone who's probably up for a promotion, her second promotion with the organization in about 3 weeks. And so it's creating that environment where people feel open to speak, where there's lots of transparency, where you're investing in the team. So bringing 12 people into Indianapolis for 3 days, and hotels and meals and activities and flights is expensive, but it pays over in spades.
Yeah.
There's no replacement for that bonding team with your organization.
I totally agree with you. And, we try to run our firm the same way. And I'm always like, look, just because it's my name, like Bear Law, that doesn't mean anything, because there's so much that I don't know. And I'm learning from everybody all the time. And, we want to hear, hey, this is not working, or actually, this is a way better way of doing something, and it can be more effective. And I'm all ears, because I definitely don't know everything. Far from it. In fact, the cliche of, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
It's so true.
What's next for you? I guess, are there any upcoming things that you want to do or want to accomplish? I mean, obviously you've got a long road ahead of doing a lot in this industry, but is there anything where you're like, you know what, I really want to get this done at some point, or this is a key goal of mine?
Yeah. For me, it's more strategic. I really want to bring on an advisory board. It's, as you probably know, it's lonely being the leader of the organization. And my husband's amazing, but by education, he's a rocket scientist. So he's not understanding marketing. And so him talking to me about
rocket science, though.
Him talking to me about like dampers and brakes and tires. I'm like, what? SEO. But developing an advisory board that is well-rounded, that can help take the organization to its next level. We've been offered to be acquired a couple of times. Definitely not ready for that, but I think we might get there. My goal is in the next probably 5 to 10 years to transition running the business to 2 in particular people on our leadership team, and have them really run with it while I retire in Mexico and move to the advisory board.
Any particular place in Mexico?
Cabo San Lucas.
Yeah, I love Cabo. I love Cabo. It's
Yeah, we go every year, so we're excited to retire there, and I will never stop working because it's just part of who I am, and I love it. I get energy from it, but certainly on a daily basis, running the organization, I'll transition that.
And you can run it from Cabo remotely, right?
I do every time we're on vacation. We were looking at houses last year, and I was in the backseat, like furiously typing on my phone, and my husband was like, well, that's proof positive you can run that company from anywhere.
That's technology for you these days.
Yeah.
If people want to learn more about you and Dekaf, where can they go to find you?
They can go to dekafdigital.com, and it's DEKAF digital.com. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's under Adriana Cowdin. And if you want some fun pictures of my baby, you can go to Instagram for Henry Winston's mom.
And that's the lovely Shih Tzu.
He's amazing. He's snoring right below me right now.
the empath pup.
That's it.
Well, it's awesome. Adriana, it was awesome talking to you and learning more about Dekaf and a little bit about your life and what you've been through. And it's awesome to hear the strength that you've gotten from that and the people that you've helped.
Thank you so much. It was really an honor to be here today. I appreciate the time.
Oh, thank you. Well, we look forward to having your podcast out, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.